What's up, guys? Today I am coming to you as a very tired ZacBaldy, who has been filled with stress since Tuesday when I heard this thing was about to get tuned. So a bit of a backstory. Is the 13B toast? I hope not. After 6 months of being on the road and fixing up the cooling issue, and then fixing up the turbo issue, and replacing it with all brand new parts, we have been plagued with somehow this thing is just not holding coolant. And for those of you who own a rotary, you guys will understand just how bad that is. I'm trying to laugh about it, but at the end of the day, if these tests that I'm about to do come back and say that this thing is dead, I'm gonna be heartbroken. Like, it's my car that I've wanted ever since I was a kid. And I've driven at 1,000 Ks in the last year and a half.
Shouldn't have sold the Falcon, you should have done that single peg, isn't it, bro?
No, in all fairness, you guys all know that I am not one to shy away from a challenge, and owning my dream car is certainly not one of them. This right here, if you guys haven't been following along at home, is my Series 8 Bridgeport 13B, now single turbo, RX7 FD, and it is absolutely beautiful. It is everything that I've ever wanted in a car. I've taken it out for a few drives now, and just trying to really learn the car. This thing is a monster of a car. 431 horsepower on 98 at 14 PSI has just blown me away. This turbo is so efficient for this car, and I am so over the moon with how this thing performs. However, we have been plagued with the issue of the 13B coolant drinking. And I honestly think it's down to my bleeding ability. I do honestly think this wasn't bled properly, but it hasn't stopped me from not sleeping for the past 2 nights before I could actually run these tests on the car. Let's be honest, this car has had coolant issues ever since the beginning. Having it off the road and replacing literally everything about this car and then getting it back on the road for the first time, there is gonna be some little issues here and there that I'm gonna have to fix up. And this is just one of the many issues that I know I'm gonna have with this car. As it gets back on the road after basically changing the entire setup from how this car's been since the year 2000. So let me run you guys through what exactly has been happening. Now, I've taken this car for a few drives and I'll insert a couple of little pulls right here. Thing sounds amazing. I have done a few really good rips off camera, and this thing all the way to redline just hauls ass. A few little things have been happening. I've experienced a little tiny misfire with a little bit of light load and throttle, which went away on the second drive. So today I'm going to be putting some new plugs in it after we bleed it up and do everything else as well. But the other issue I have had is it's been drinking coolant. Now, I don't think it's been drinking coolant as such, because there has been, well, if you guys can see, there is a lot of coolant just chilling around the place. You guys have all known that I make a mess whenever I use this stuff. There's some questionable hoses certainly down in this little setup, but today we're going to dive into this. I have a coolant pressure tester kit, and then I also have the funnel as well, so we can probably bleed this thing up with a nice high reservoir there. But aside from that, yeah, no, we are going to have to go through this car and do everything. So the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to check the spark plugs. So the spark plugs, I wanted to make sure that they were nice and sort of black on top, but they weren't too, crazy. So if you guys don't know, RX7 spark plugs, they look like this. Super cool design. It's like all hollow with an electrode in the center. It's pretty cool. This is what mine look like. So honestly, not too bad. I'll see if I can get you guys a bit of a close-up. So if I was to experience coolant inside of the housings, you guys would see there'd be a little bit of white pitting and stuff like that on these that I've been told. There you go, now you guys can actually see it. So if I was to experience coolant inside the housings, not only would I be experiencing like crystallization on the tip of the spark plugs, I've been told in a rotary will act like a steam cleaner and will actually like clean the top of the plugs as well, whereas these still have sort of that nice blacky sort of texture on it. So I'm pretty happy with those plugs. I do have a brand new set of NGK BUR 90Qs, which is what I run in this car. So we have a full set of them ready to go. And then what I also did is I turned the engine over by hand to make sure that compression and everything was still there. Sounds like compression and everything sounds perfect. These things are super easy to turn over by hand. Literally just got to grab like a 19 mil on a 1/2 inch ratchet and literally just turn it over by hand. It's super simple from the pulley at the front there. But I turned it over by hand, just listening out for, you know, six very consistent sounds, which it was, so I'm happy with the compression. But the other thing I was looking for was whether I would end up passing coolant through the spark plug holes. And I can happily tell you guys that I couldn't feel any coolant through the spark plug holes. So it hasn't been sort of leaking into the chamber, even though it probably would have burnt it off anyway. So everything's looking up, but we're about to do a coolant pressure test to make sure this thing holds 16 PSI. I have the spark plugs out, so that way if I do experience pressure loss, I can turn the engine over by hand and see if there's any coolant inside the housings themselves, which is obviously not ideal. So let's quickly grab the pressure tester, put it up to the car, we'll pump it up to 16 PSI and make sure this thing is holding coolant, which I don't think it will because I've been having drinking issues, so we'll see how we go. I'm not gonna lie, shitting bricks right now, but we'll see how we go. Seems to be dropping ever so slightly from 15. Rightio, so as you guys can see, there's no significant pressure loss whatsoever, but it's holding at 16 PSI. So I will check back in a couple of minutes and make sure that is still the same. Yeah, it's good that it's holding 16. I'm gonna turn the engine over a few times and see if that needle moves. But I don't know whether that's an actual test you can do, but I have a feeling that if I can turn the engine over, make everything sort of move around if it needs to, I might experience something. But I also have no leaking, so that's another thing as well, which could also lead to maybe the pressure cap for the Vinifab AST could be the issue. But I'm also just looking around at things like down through here, whether that's leaking or just whether this questionable hose that I had here was leaking. So just gonna leave it there, leave it to do its thing and see if I can find any coolant issues, because it could just be the fact that I haven't bled this thing up properly. So I'm really hoping that that's the case. But yeah, you guys can see that thing is not moving. It's probably been a good minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes now, so happy about that. Rightio, so happy Zach, as you guys can see, 10:22 AM, sitting at 16. 10:44, it's still sitting at 16. So I am a very happy Zach. That is a massive sign this thing is in a healthy state. The only issue now is where is the coolant leak coming from? Now, I do think that the coolant underneath the car could be from just me filling it up, as well as some of the splash that's all down there. However, what we're going to do now is we are going to bleed it with the proper bleeder that we have sitting right there. We're just going to bleed it properly, jack up the front of the car, just make sure to try and get as much air out of the system as humanly possible. We're going to do that about 3 times, let the thermostat open every single time, and then after that we'll go through, change the plugs and do all that sort of stuff. See if we can take it out for a cruise maybe later on next week. This is another really controversial thing that you guys probably aren't going to like, is the fact that I'm getting rid of the T51R mod. I've driven it twice now and it is ear-piercingly loud. It overkills the entire car. And as cool as it is to have, it sounds a lot different on camera. It is spooling and making those extremely high-pitched noises all the way from idle. Now, originally I thought that the T51R mod would be a little bit different, and that on most cars like the R33 or stuff like that, stuff that idles around that 1000 RPM or so, and pushing a lot less exhaust gas out, it would probably be perfect. It'd be perfect for a car like that. However, on the rotary, it is constant, and especially at Bridgeport, it is just constantly pulsing and constantly just trying to spool up that turbo, and the T51R mod is just flowing so much air that it is constantly, it just has this high pitch whine. Now it sounds great when it's on idle, but unfortunately the T51R housing is going to go, but that's okay because we have another really cool thing in store, which is probably going to sound just as good, if not better. We'd have better dose as well, which I'm pretty stoked about. So we have a G35 front housing coming for this thing from Teo. So he's gonna be machining up that so it sounds like that really cool, like really instant snap from the G Series turbos. It's gonna sound very similar. And that paired with the nice big stainless intake that we have is gonna sound pristine. So I'm very stoked about that. But yes, first of all, let's fill this thing up with coolant. We're gonna jack it up. I'm also going to see if I can undo a few things on here so I can try and bleed out some of the air from the radiator here. But yes, first thing, let's just jack it up. Sorry neighbours and sorry Douglas. Actually, it's a lot quieter now, to be honest. It's a lot less smoky now. There you go, we got some small bubbles coming through. Beautiful. So, a few things we're looking for, just to make sure that the coolant is all bled up properly. The second thing we're looking for is leaks. So a leak could potentially only show itself when all the lines and everything are all hot. So fingers crossed, that's not the issue. Fingers crossed, it's just my bleeding abilities. So yeah. Can't see anything just yet, but I will keep an eye out. How much nicer is this exhaust now? Very, very good. And no smoke. No oil smoke, no coolant smoke. Beautiful. Alrighty guys, so about an hour or so has passed. I haven't left the car obviously running for that long, but yeah, no, so I've bled it up probably about 3 or 4 times now. This is I think the 3rd time. Man, it's oily. Anyway, so the car itself, it seems to be taking along a lot more coolant than I have before, which is good. Don't seem to have any leaks, which is nice. And I also did a hot test with the coolant pressure measurer thingy, and it held 16 psi. So happy about that. So I've just taken the bleeder off, and now we've just got a standard pressure cap on. This may be another cause. It might just be pushing everything into the overflow. Overflow is currently full, so we'll be able to work that out. But yeah, sounds like it's just done 1 cycle, so we'll turn it off. And then I'll let it completely cool down and let the pressure sort of... Yeah, beautiful. Rightio. So now I'm just going to let that completely cool down. And yeah, should be good. What's up guys? It is a new week. And I am not gonna lie, I've been stressing about this car for the entire time, trying to work out exactly where this coolant's going. And I haven't actually driven the car in the last week. I've driven it a few times. I took it down like a good, 20-minute drive, another 30-minute drive, and it's just been drinking coolant. But I've bled it back up again, like you guys saw in the last section of this video. And today was my last attempt to figure out exactly what is going wrong with this engine. I put the coolant pressure tester up to 20 psi just before, and it held 20 psi really, really nicely. So then I started doing some stuff with the engine, and I started noticing it going down again. Okay, rightio. So the spark plugs were out already, so I turned the engine over a few times, and I can't see any coolant coming out of the spark plug holes, so I'm pretty stoked about that. Originally I thought 16 psi would be enough, but no, that is the coolant cap. And so 100%, I had a chat to the guys at RMS today, and they said we tested up to 20 to 25, which scares me a little bit. But yeah, no, I put it up to 20 today, and I'm just going to let it sit. But we've gone down a little bit. Now, this is over the last 2 hours. We've lost 2 psi. But then also, we have had a new discovery down the bottom. So this coolant drip right here is fresh. And that led me to... Now let me go, where on earth is this leak? Because it has taken half an hour for me to have that drip. If you guys look up, we have these 2 little bits right here. And then if you guys sort of look up from there, we have this bit right here. And you can see it is full of coolant. So I'm like, how on earth is it getting onto the sway bar mounts? You guys can see just up there, we have a very fresh coolant leak, which I could imagine could have been some of my issues. So I've just got up to the top of the car. I'm gonna fix it all up, pump it back up to 20 psi, and see if we're all good. But I've been told from Ryan at RMS, even if it held that 20 psi to 19.75 psi in 5 minutes, then the engine is sweet and we're healthy and good to go. So massive relief off my shoulders, because I'm not gonna lie, I basically haven't, well, since I knew the tune was coming, I haven't slept. This car has so many thousands of my dollars in it and just has taken so much time. It is my dream car, and to not drive this thing, like, the idea is to rip this thing around and have so much fun with it. I wanted to daily drive it for this whole week getting ready for this wedding, but if I can't get this sorted, then I won't be going to that wedding. I'll just take the 33, which I'm sure that we'll love the 33 at the wedding, but no, I doubt that. So yes, in this video, I think we've got our coolant issue sorted. It is bled up as good as it possibly can be. So fingers crossed now we don't have any more issues. I'm going to tighten up that hose, and hopefully that, fingers crossed, hopefully that gets rid of all of our coolant issues. We shouldn't see any more coolant on the bottom of the car at all. But yeah, very stoked about that. I'm pretty confident now that I've got every single coolant leak I possibly can. I'm going to leave the coolant pressure test to sit once again once I've tightened up those two hoses to make sure nothing is going to be leaking. And then, yeah, put it up to 20, let it sit overnight, see what it's at the morning. If it's still a fairly high number, then I'm pretty stoked. But yes, I'm fairly confident that everything is all bled up properly. We should just be able to take it out for a drive, rip it around, and have some fun. So, I just want it to run. Alrighty guys, I have a bit of an update for the FD. Buddy, come here. You've been playing in the grass outside, have you? Have you been playing in the grass? Come here. The world wants to see you. Also, we've decided to get another dog as well. We're going to get another dog soon. Yay. So, pretty much I have eliminated every single other issue in regards to the cooling system. And so I have made sure that there are no leaks in the car whatsoever. We have pressure tested this thing multiple times at 20 psi, and it held it nice and simply. So at this current point in time, it could be down to the fact that 1, it is not bled properly again, or 2, it is the pressure. So at this point, it's been about a week or so since I last actually filmed for this current video here. So it's actually about 2 weeks old. We've done the wedding, we've done a whole bunch of driving with this car, because honestly, I was just way too fed up. I was like, I don't care whether this engine's toast, I'm just gonna freaking drive it, and I'm gonna enjoy the crap out of the car. And that's what I've been doing for the last week. And as it turns out, that has pointed me in the right direction as to where all of this coolant is going. So I was pretty confident that when we bled it, it was completely fine. It didn't make any pressurized bubbles whatsoever, and there were no bubbles actually coming out of it. I have currently bled it now 4 or 5 times, and the last 2 times I started it, and it didn't create any new bubbles whatsoever. So I was fairly confident that the entire cooling system was completely sorted. What are you... Are you okay? Are you okay, Douglas? No? Do you want me to tell them the reason as to why we can't find any coolant in the car? Yeah? No? So this was the biggest thing, and this, I don't understand it. But then again, having a little bit more of a think about it, I kind of do understand it. So the pressure cap that we got for the VinFab AST, I was fairly confident in. It was a brand new pressure cap, and it was one of those heavy duty sort of heavy locking sort of ones, so it wasn't going to pop off. I've never used one of them before. I felt it, and it felt springy, and probably about as springy as what the other radiator cap was. And my overflow was completely full, like it was well above full when I was doing all this bleeding. So I made sure that it was actually full, so whenever I decided, so if it was pushing and blowing past the radiator cap, that it would be filling it up and just dumping it straight out of the overflow. It would just be leaking straight out and onto the floor. Now here's the weirdest thing that I think I've been able to find. When the car was running, the radiator cap would seal completely perfectly. I took the overflow hose off and I let it get all the way up to about 85 degrees, which is the hottest that I think my car has ever run with the new V-mount. With the new V-mount and everything else as well. And while the car was running, it did not at all, it did not push anything past the radiator cap. And here's what happened when I turned the car off.
That's crazy.
Really odd. So when these cars actually stop and we turn them off like we do at like servos and everything else as well, what it was doing is as soon as the car would turn off for around about maybe 30 or so seconds, it would start dumping at least maybe 300 mil of coolant straight past the radiator cap and down into the overflow, and it was creating a pull underneath the overflow to then when I would go out and I would drive the car, it was just letting it spray all over the road and I would never be able to find out where that coolant was going. However, when it was in my garage and the car was running, it wasn't pushing anything past and it wasn't dumping it all over the floor. And if you guys know where that is on an FD, it's basically like, it's a really annoying spot because it's within the fender well, but it's behind the RS twin oil cooler, so you can't actually see where everything sort of sits down there. It's kind of like a little pull, and I wouldn't have been able to find it either way. And then as soon as I would take the car for a drive, it was basically just sloshing it about and dumping it all out onto the road, and I could never have found it. You couldn't find the pressure cap or anything dumping whilst it was just running, and it was stationary, which is so annoying. But when the car is turned off, what actually happens inside the irons and inside that whole 13B housing is everything starts to get really hot. My car, when I used to turn it off and go get fuel, I'd come back to the car and it would be sitting at like 110 degrees Celsius, which is a little bit hot, but obviously it drops almost instantly straight back down to about 95. And then you can, go out on the road and it starts running and it gets down to a normal temperature again. However, when it was getting up to those temperatures when you turn the car off, it was pressurizing the entire cooling system to the point where it was just completely just shooting straight out the cap. No worries at all. And I also found it really weird that when I was turning the car back on again, it wasn't giving me a low coolant sign. Well, when coolant, it pressurizes and expands. So the coolant, whenever I would take the car out for a drive, as long as it remained hot-ish, that would mean that the coolant would expand enough to where it was sitting above the low level buzzer. However, when I let the car completely cool down, that is when the coolant would contract enough that it would sit below the buzzer, and every time I'd turn the car on, it'd go, warning, you got low coolant. Oh man, it was such a dumb thing to find. Once again, it was just one of those things where it's a dumb fix and a dumb issue that I shouldn't have had happen. So, new coolant cap, the car's sorted. Now I know it sounds stupid that I did all of this work only to put it down to a cap, but at the end of the day, it was actually kind of interesting. It was kind of a weird fix, and I'm very, very happy that I did manage to find it. I will leave this video up. I will upload this video, and I will leave all the information in this video up because I want to try and help as many people out there that are new to the rotary game. What you can do to sort of try and help coolant issues and what you can do to try and find issues. A lot of the time, there's always some dumb issue or some dumb fix that's always going to work. And I was so pissed to find that it was just a cap after that long, and I could have been driving the car for that long and not worrying about it, that it was just a cap. But we're all good now. We're all happy. So yes, I hope someone out there that has the same issue as me has able to use some of the things in this video to help try and find their coolant issues. But aside from that, massive thank you everyone for watching, and 13B will be ripping on the road in some videos very, very soon. Peace out guys, have a good one.